So I wanted to start off by saying, I got the phone call from Steve Douglas a couple weeks back to do this. And I thought it was kind of neat, I was like, well, Steve Douglas, one of the bigger names in this industry, right? I was like, that's kind of cool. So I get here, I'm standing here, and I see all of you that are willing to waste your time to come watch me or listen to me talking, and it's an absolute honor. I appreciate it. I wanted to start off just for some of y'all that don't know me. My name is Micka Burkhart. I am the current Tennessee state record holder for the blue catfish. And the last 2 years have been kind of a whirlwind for me. So I'm going to back up and I want to start off. I want to kind of give you a little bit about me, who I am as a person, and then I'll go into what I want to talk about. So everybody knows, well, some of you may not know, I'm a 21-year Army veteran. During that time, I've probably been in some of the worst possible places any human being needs to be part of. So about 5 years ago, fishing itself, I'm not going to say just catfishing, but fishing itself, I dare say saved my life. It did. I found a passion for it. I absolutely loved it, and turns out I'm pretty good at it. I'm not the best, but I'm pretty good at it. So that helped me a lot. So that kind of drives what I do on a day-to-day basis when I make videos or when I'm not making videos or when I'm taking other veterans fishing or things like that. It just drives me to do it because it takes my mind out of where bad places into great places. That's the reason why I do it. So, but because of that, I try to do the best I can at what I can do, just like we all try to do. And so to that point, I dig way too far into the details, right? So, but it's to make myself better, and in turn, I want to make y'all better. And it's bigger than that. I want to make this community better, right? So that's what I try to do each and every time I go out and fish. And if you guys watch my videos, I try to portray as much of that as I possibly can. So I hope that because that does lead into what I want to talk about. Because some of y'all are going to look at me like, why would you do that, or why would you think of that, or what's the point, Because most of us, we first started catfishing, we were just kind of one of them, grab a tub of chicken liver and let's go hit the bank, right? Let's go find some catfish. But there's absolutely more to it than that, to find more and bigger fish. And I'm not going to stand here and say that I'm an expert, because I am not. There's out here I can already see far better fishermen than I. But it's just the small details that I think a lot of us overlook that could be applied in every situation while we're fishing that could produce more or bigger fish at certain times. I kind of pride myself in catching big fish. I've actually made a pretty good living doing it. And but it's not always the case. You still got to have the fish cooperate. But anyway, I'll get into what I was going to talk about. So you've had since yesterday, and I think you've got a couple more, at least one more today, great speakers that are going to be in here talking about catching fish. And that's awesome. And learning how to catch fish, or different tips to how to catch fish or bigger fish it's awesome. But where it all starts is bait, right? So we can all agree on that. If you don't have the bait, if you don't have the right bait, you don't have the good bait or the fresh bait or whatever bait, none of the rest of it matters. So about 2 years ago, I'll back it up to 3 years. I was one of them guys. So for me, where I live at, skipjacks are plentiful, shad's plentiful, everything's plentiful. But I was in that mentality, I watched the Steve Douglases, I watched all these other guys, and they're constantly using, skipjack or shad. So I'd run to the steam plant, I'd catch me 300 skipjacks. That's my bait for the entire year, right? So that's what I'm using. I have used 12-month-old baits. Little did I know I probably shouldn't have, because typically if you freeze baits, even if you freeze it the right way, you get a good 3 months of shelf life that it needs to go. With that, that's kind of what I've always done, but and even in my military career, this created quite a bit of issues too. I always ask why. Okay, so if you've been in the military, and if you're ever a junior to your senior, you ask why. That wasn't the right move. So in this industry, I look around at other people and I look at other things. I look at other ways I've caught fish in the past, what baits that I've used, and so I ask why. Why am I stuck doing what everybody else is doing? Why am I stuck doing what this person said, is the best thing to do? Why am I doing that? So I got out of that mentality. And once I got out of that mentality, a whole new world just kind of opened up, because believe it or not, skipjack and shad are an awesome bait all year round. And you can catch fish with them all year round. But I'm a firm believer, and I have proved this to myself several times, that catfish in general, and this is pretty much, you can go with bass, you can go with white bass, you can go with any fish that's a predator fish. They will prefer different baits certain times of the year. Not saying they won't eat the same bait all year, but they prefer different fish different times of the year. And so knowing that, learning that, or just playing with it, just thinking about it, I started coming up with, the last 2 years, I started coming up with kind of my rotation of baits, which I'll get into in a minute. The first part of it is where can I now consistently find and catch this fresh bait? So I ain't froze a stick of bait in 2 years, because I can always, it's not always easy, but I can always find a good consistent stock of fresh bait every single trip I go. If I can catch it that morning, use it that day, that's the best. I'm a firm believer, I know a lot of you guys probably have your own opinions about stuff like that, but I'm a firm believer that fresh is best, no matter what you're trying to do. Fresh bait, I don't care what it is. So once I figured that out, I took all last year, and if you guys watch my videos, you've seen probably some of the struggles I had. I'd waste the morning, I'd waste 4 hours in the morning trying to catch bait, but I'd find it. And once I found it, I had a good day, or a mediocre day, because the fish still got to cooperate too. But once I figured all that out, it just made it so much easier, and I was confident. I guess that's the kind of the biggest thing we all look for, is confidence in what we're doing. Whether it be, rods, reels, tackle, it doesn't matter. There's a bazillion of it out there, so you pick one, feel confident in it. But you always got to be confident in everything you're doing, because that just makes you a heck of a better fisherman, regardless. So again, once I figured that out, now I'll kind of go through a little bit of the rotation that I do. Now I know in my state, Tennessee, we can use everything's on the table to include the table we can use for bait. So we could use crappie, white bass, I mean, you just name it. If it's a fish, you catch it by legal means, you can use it for bait. Now I know some states you can't do that, and for that I apologize. It doesn't make sense to me, but whatever, because I'm a firm believer, if you catch it by legal means, and you got the right limit, it's the right size, but you could eat it all you want, but you can't use it for bait. I don't get it, but I guess maybe one day I'll run for office and hopefully change it. I don't know. So we're getting in, and I want to start off because we're at that time of year now where we're going to start seeing a transition in the bait. So, but I'll back it up to. So everybody, I guess pretty much across the country, we had a hard freeze about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We all had a pretty good hard freeze, and that's probably when you notice your shad and stuff that you were chasing is pushed deep, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. It all kind of pushed deep. So up until that point, I was catching skipjacks off the bank, muddy banks in particular, at about 2 to 3 foot of water. That's where the thread fins were pushed, the smaller stuff. And then when you start seeing your gizzards and your thread fins start to push deeper in that 15 to 20 to 30, which right now we're in about that, where I'm at, 30 to 25 foot of water. Well, the skipjacks, I don't know where they go. I have no idea where they go. I know they go up to the steam plant, or they may be below a dam, but on the river, they just disappear. I don't know if they go deep. I don't know what they do, but that's not the point. The point is, when I know that happens, that's when I'm netting shad. I'm netting shad. Did you guys y'all watch my how to make a tape net video? And y'all watch that? Yeah. It's a good video. You could take a cheap net and make it work for you. But anyway, so I take my tape net and I catch a shad. And then, of course, we're getting to now where we're going to get, and the reason why I go to shad, let me tell you this. So typically when you have a hard freeze like that, what you'll have is a shad kill. I'm sure y'all that have a lot of shad, y'all have experienced the shad kill. So when a shad kill happens, you could probably catch fish on different baits, but shad is the ultimate bait during that time, because obviously that's what they're eating. Now it does make it tough because the shad kill creates more food for all these fish. So you're trying to get them to eat your one piece of bait compared to thousands of them maybe laying on the bottom, or even more thousands slowly dying. So it makes it a tough bite. But what I've experienced, you have to have shad. But then like this week we're gonna start to warm up. I don't know if y'all really pay attention to the weather like I do. Like, I'm a stickler for the weather. Of course, that's, I gotta keep up with it, because when I go fish and film, I gotta make sure I can take all my camera stuff and nothing happens. But so we're gonna start warming up. And according to what I've heard, read, and seen, that it's going to continue to warm up. So what's going to end up happening with the bait situation for me in my area, and I can only speak on my area because I don't fish probably where a lot of you guys fish, but I'm going to transition from the fattier baits, and I'm going to call fattier baits the skipjacks and shad, and move into more what I call the flakier meat bait. So it'll be more of your crappies and bluegills, white bass, and even bass. I know that hurts some feelings, but hey, if it catches me a fish, I'm using it. So I kind of transitioned to that, and that's actually really good. I don't know if those that you have states or that live in states where you could use all that stuff. Is that kind of what you have seen, or is there any of y'all that live in states like that? No, really? You kind of see where I say the flakier meat fish, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so. That turns out to be an awesome summertime bait, and something I hit on last year too, because I'm pretty sure that most of us deal with Asian carp, right? Like one way, shape, fashion, or form. Asian carp is actually an outstanding bait. I heard about it. People talk about it. I see people on Facebook tearing fish up on Asian carp. So last year I made it a point during the hotter months of the year. I made it a point that I only did nothing but use Asian carp. And man, I did really well. And but I'll tell you the trick to Asian carp, and this is just something I tried. Y'all can try it. You have to do it a day extra, or you not do it at all. It's completely up to you. So what I would do is I'd fish that day, that night, or that afternoon. I'd catch, I'd obviously snag a couple Asian carp, but I'd carry me some Ziploc bags in the boat, and then I would flay them, and then I would, chunk it up, kind of what I would use, the size of bait that I would use the next day, stick it in that bag, and try to get as much of that blood and stuff in there as I possibly could. And I just set them in the cooler, let them sit there, overnight, and use them again the next day. And it was killer. It was killer. Caught some good fish on it, caught some good flatheads and blues on it. But that's kind of like the whole summertime pattern, hot water pattern that I use as far as like baits. And of course, you start getting into late summer, early fall, you kind of rotate back into the skipjacks and the shad and stuff like that. The biggest thing about all that, I kind of told you the rotation, but the biggest thing about all that is you can always, I can say always, but you could usually run to a dam or something to catch shad, skipjack. And I'll go back to what I said originally, that's what I thought the bait always had to be. It's not the case. It's really not the case, because like I said, these fish, they prefer different baits different times of year. And I've proven that, like I said, to myself and to actually some other people. But I fish a river system. Who here fishes a river system? That's all you got. So got a lot of got a few lake guys in here. I'm sorry. If you put me on a lake, I'll be lost. I don't know why. I fished a few lakes, and I guess maybe because of the flow, or maybe because of how the bottom sets up. I don't know. I can't. Give me some time, I'd probably figure it out, or go with somebody that knows it. I'd probably figure it out pretty good too. But on a river system, where I fish, I'm talking the Tennessee and the Cumberland. Those are two main rivers I fish, and it's actually played out in some other rivers that I fished also. Is I kind of let the river tell me what to use, and what I mean by that is if the shad are schooled up, if they're running, they're moving, probably going to be a good bait to use. And same thing if skipjack. If skipjack are fairly easy to catch on the main river. Now, I'm not talking about up a dam or steam plants or nothing like that where they're always at for some reason, but I'm talking the main river itself. If I can find that bait on the main river and it's easy for me to catch, it's typically what I'm going to use. And it hasn't really steered me wrong yet. I'm not saying it won't, but it hasn't yet. So like even when the bluegills spawn, when the bluegills start spawning, those are typically going to be probably your best bait to use. But again, I get the advantage of when the crappie are spawning, when the white bass are spawning, when all them fish start to gather up and get together and do their thing, it's typically the better baits to use. And again, like I said, it hasn't steered me wrong yet. I'm not saying it won't. I've had some days where I went out there and I've completely gotten it wrong, and so I'll go further into detail on that too. Is how many of y'all noticed that even different cuts of bait make a huge difference? I'm talking between chunks, fillets, heads, body chunks, gut pockets. Ain't it amazing? Ain't it amazing how these fish are just they can be so picky sometimes. I mean, it's almost frustrating, really. For instance, I'll tell you how I come across this little piece of information. It was early summer. Water temps were probably in the 80s. Well, I say they were mid 70s. And up until that point, I would catch bluegill, and I was just chunking them and just having awesome trips. Like, I was catching some good fish. Well, I did the exact same thing. It was like, I think 2 days later, I did the exact same thing. Had me a bucket full of bluegills, and I went out there and I just chunked them up, threw them out. Didn't get a single bite. You know, so I'm sitting in the boat, I'm kind of like, what's going on? I mean, I'm questioning life itself, you know? So, like, well, let me just play around with it. So what I done is I took me a couple bluegill, and I filleted them, or I scaled them, or no, I'll take that back. First time I filleted them, and I started just hooking the fillets on the hook, and I tossed it out there. I was getting a few more bites, you know, but it was still kind of like, no, I'm in a good area. Like, I seen some fish, I should be getting bit. And then so the next time I rebaited, I said, well, let me try this. So I scaled it, and then I filleted it just like that. I mean, it was just, I couldn't keep them off the hook. Matter of fact, I think I got a video on it. I'll have to, if any of y'all really want to know, I'll look it up and try to find it. But it's been last year sometime. But I had to go down to 2 rods, you know, because 1, I was running out of bait. 2, I couldn't keep them all in the water. Hey, it's just amazing to me that how these fish will do that and be that way to the point where something small, and it's not like I went 100 miles upriver to find different fish. I was in the same spot, right? I was in the same spot, and it was just so different. Now, I will say that it could have been a time of day thing also, you know, so I may have wasted dead time because the fish weren't moving, and it was just a coincidence that I did this, and then I started catching fish because it was the time they were wanting to feed. Could be that too, I don't know. But I really wish I did know. I'd probably have to do an interview with a catfish to figure that out. But good luck getting him to talk. But I've applied that in other situations at other times, and it's worked. But that's just one of the things. I tell you, these old fish, and if y'all fish more today, you know these old fish will humble you in a second, any chance they get. And I think that's the biggest thing about this, and I'm gonna say fishing in general, but I absolutely love. It just drives me every day. Because like I always say, I learn more from a bad day than I ever do from a good day. Because a good day, you can almost do nothing wrong. So on a bad day, you're kind of like, what can I do right? You know what I mean? So it just makes you just try new things, try different ideas. You know, like I say, even hooking the bait different sometimes makes a huge difference. I think it's kind of really all I wanted to say, but I did want to do open it up for questions, because I get a lot of those all the time, and I wanted to kind of get y'all's thoughts, because I'm all about ideas, and it's not just for me, but it's for everybody else in here and whoever else is watching. It's about ideas, and if y'all follow me, on YouTube, and in the comments, I absolutely love the comments. Because I learned so much out of the comments. Because there's people from across the country that hop in there and tell me their situations and stuff like that. And that's kind of what I want to do here, if y'all don't mind.